how to draw a landscape construction layout plan. This is a really fun topic for me because and you as well, have had to deal with this so many different times. The landscape architect has all of these specification requirements. You've got to get the hardscape and landscaping and irrigation and controls and underground electrical and massive trees and the whole nine into tight places at the end of a project schedule, and it's not easy. So I'm going to talk about some of the cool things you can do to make sure that you get this done right. If you're interested in that, then stay with us. All right, so let's talk about this just for a minute. If you don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe you've forgotten, or you're like, hey, just J-Money, bring me back to the current moment, let me explain something. You have gone through the general site work. You have the underground utilities installed. The foundations, superstructure, exterior, roof, and interiors are coming along nicely. And now it's time to do your curb and gutter, your paving, your sidewalks, your massive trees, and any of your landscaping and irrigation, right? So you're ready to do that. But here's the situation. You're at the end of the project, and even if your project leadership or your project delivery team has done a good job, you don't have all the time in the world, okay? So we'll start there. And especially for the layout, for the landscaping, requires you to stake it out, obtain the landscape architect's approval before you can proceed, and then you can go ahead and plant trees and shrubs and place rocks and do all of the fun stuff, but you have to do contractually for the landscaping. And at that point, you're just like, let's just get it in. They're just plants. They're just trees. Like, what does it matter? Now, let me give you some tips because you do have to, or you get to go through this, and there is a way to do it effectively. So here are some tips starting from number one. I want you to plan your entire project with the end in mind. So how you want to exit the site. There's two exits to most projects, not all, but most projects. 1A is the commissioning and testing and inspection exit from the building. The next one is your exit outside of the site. And so you know how you need to exit the site, logistically, what your last zone is going to be, what your first zone is going to be. You take that back and you say, how am I going to sequence the exteriors? Then you run that back. How will I have to sequence the superstructure? Then the foundations, then everything from the start. You always begin your sequencing from the beginning with the end in mind. Here's what I don't want. I don't want you to end up painting yourself into a corner. I remember a project where the original superintendent, and we took over the job, but the original super said northeast, southwest for the exterior. And that literally would have boxed everybody into a corner and shoved site work literally with no exit. He was like, no, we can't do that. We've got to understand how the exterior needs to install, and we need to exit out on the northeast side. So we were able to do east, southeast, southwest, west, then move over to the northwest, middle, and out the exit, but sequence the exterior to where it was done in time for that to happen. Here's how you have to look at it. The exterior comes down, site work is available. Now, in addition to sequencing your entire building to where it's in the right order for us to exit the site properly, not only with commissioning, but with landscaping and your site work, you also need to make sure that any massive underground retention tanks or basins or dry wells or anything that you have that needs to go underground that's massive is complete. I would also probably add into that the light pole bases. If you have other things like garbage enclosures or like a little guardhouse or things like that, all of that should be primarily done. Now leave yourself enough time when that first exterior and that first zone opens for you to plan out to first go in there and do your underground electrical, your underground irrigation systems, anything that needs to be done, then your hardscape, and then immediately, based off of your hardscape, which will have been laid out to exact dimensions, plus or minus the 10th, hopefully an X, Y, Z location standpoint from a tolerance perspective. Once that's down, you're into your staking. Now, here's what I would do. I would always separate the staking of trees from bushes, from the rest of your components, like maybe you have rocks, boulders, like signage, things that go in the ground. Here's why. When you stake out the trees, a lot of times these are going to be massive excavations and you're going to tear up the rest of the staking. So now you get your trees in and now you're ready to go ahead and stake out any of your bushes, boulders, and other items. So a minimum of 2. And here's what I'd like to do. Challenge your surveyors to have permanent layouts. So instead of just doing stakes with probably, 60 penny nails, maybe even not doing hubs, try to put in more permanent monuments. Try to put in like metal stakes, a point on the top of a piece of rebar with a cap, whatever you need to do to make it permanent. I like to embed those down like 2 inches below the surface of the soil so that I can just put a sandbag over the top, try and protect them as best as I can, put the stake instead of vertically, go ahead and nail that down to the ground. But here's the problem with that. Now you have 2 rounds of staking. So here's the idea. When you come through and you stake for your trees, you can go ahead and have the surveyor leave those permanent pins in for your bushes and boulders as well. And hopefully they're protected, but if not, once the architect approves the locations and you actually get your trees in and get your backfill in and you have to restake a couple of points, if you have to do it with a surveyor, that's fine, but if you can do it with your field engineer, go ahead and do it. You already have your landscape architect's approval. Then once you do that, you get all of your irrigation run, then you get your DG, your grass, whatever the surface finished product is going to be on your landscaping, 100% installed. Then you clean everything off and then you put your final fixtures. You're talking bike racks, like I said before, signage, benches, things like that. That is the most effective way to do it. But here's my point with this, and this is critical. I've done this a lot. You're going to take the durations area by area and you want to level the zone sizes to where you have a similar amount of work in each. You don't want to do zone 1 landscaping and it takes like 2 days, then zone 2 takes like 8 days. You're going to want to break those up so your trades can work in succession, otherwise they will end up with a bottleneck. And so the way you engineer this, once you have all your sequencing right, you come up with a layout drawing that's on CAD or Civil 3D, that's on a large printed map that shows the location of all of your layout, and that's translated to a coordinate file for your data collector. That way you can, like I said, restake it out if something gets damaged after the visit from the landscape architect. These are questions that people are asking. What should we include in the layout that's not on the architect's plan? These are some of the typical things that you should consider. You should consider laying out with extra care and detail I think the term would be radii, but any radiused areas in a way that carpenters can take a jib or a template and lay out concrete structures, the curvature for curbs and gutter, for sidewalk, or even for some of the plant features, or even some of the decorative features in your landscape work. The other thing is you need to engineer your offsets. So obviously for your trees, you're going to have like a 5 or 10 foot offset. Bushes, you're going to have a 3, 4, 5 foot offset. Engineer how you're going to stake these out so that the stakes can be in the right location, protected whenever you need them. There's a really great book, obviously I would say that it's our book, Elevating Construction Surveyors, that talks all about putting your layout in permanent locations. How early should I start planning for the landscape layout? I'm telling you, like 2 months minimum, 3 months before you start your final site work. I remember, actually, I will always remember this, Ray McCoy coming and visiting downtown Whole Foods World headquarters that we were building, and I was working on actually some of the plant features up on some of the elevated decks, and specifically some radius sections, some curved sections. Some of them were actually spiral, so it wasn't all exact arcs. But anyway, I was designing the layout and everything, and I remember creating these large layout maps for the field crews and him coming to talk to me about a future project. And I remember it was about 2 to 3 months before we started, and all of the planning was done so the other field engineers could take over. You don't want to get in a bad spot with this. You have to deal with the nurseries, you have to deal with mobilizing the trees, and you are at the end of the project where everything is critical. So these are some of the common questions that we've been getting for this, and I'll turn this into a blog post, but this is so fun. Basically, we get through these phases with intelligence, not pushing. Oh, real quick, I know this is a longer video. Let me tell you another story. Instead of doing the planning that I'm talking about, a general contractor, I tried to distance myself from this as much as I could. In fact, I didn't agree to actually become a part of it. It was such a mess. They wanted to get this massive interior pool and hardscape and landscape area done. It was all architectural concrete, and there were complex plants and stuff, and they were like, Jason, we want to rush, push, and panic. And I was like, no, and the GS got super mad at me, but they literally just blew through there. didn't create layout plans, didn't coordinate everything, didn't involve the landscape architect, didn't have lift drawings, didn't do anything that I was talking about from a sequencing standpoint, and they were just placing things, and there were puddles and, you know, bird baths, the same thing, and concrete that was at the wrong elevation, cross slopes that the inspectors rejected, ripped out massive sections of exposed stamped concrete. Oh my gosh, I wasn't a part of it, but this was such a mess, and it lost so much trust with the owner. Don't fall for the lie that landscape and hardscape are easy to do. You can burn through so many dollars and lose so much trust in this phase. Please heed the advice. I'm going to put this into a blog post for you in the description below. Reach out to me if you have any questions. On we go.